Okay, so you might have clicked on this video because you're wondering what a 3D printed block has to do with life. We're going to talk about it, and I'll show you a 3D printed block in this video. This is a 3D printed block. Now as my camera focuses, I want you to take a look. This block basically goes inside out of itself over and over and over. It's a continual pattern. But either way you do it, you can fidget with it and it's very fun and it takes your mind off of stuff and it keeps you focused. But it's printed with a 3D printer. And if you look very carefully, we'll do some close-ups, you can see every little line that 3D printer had to make in order to make this block. It had to go back and forth very carefully, very meticulously to print this block puzzle. And all of these parts were printed in working condition. When this came out of the 3D printer, there was no pieces to put together. There's no pieces to attach or reattach or unattach. It is all one solid piece of 3D printed material. And it was all made with a 3D printer and a design. Now, let me ask you this. Let's just look at this block for a second and let's just ask ourselves, is it possible scientifically, out of everything that we understand in the universe, is it possible that this block with all of these intricate little layers and these intricate hinges, is it possible that this block was created out of nothing? Or, let me phrase it another way, did this block create itself? Well, the simple answer we all know is no, of course it didn't. We all know this was created with a 3D printer. You can tell by the little lines, you can tell by the way that it's made, you can tell by the way that it feels, and honestly, we also know that because the guy who made this block used a 3D printer. But what if we did not know that this block was created with a 3D printer? Well, what would be our logical reasoning as to where this block came from? Well, you and I both think that this block was made by someone, somewhere, right? So if we both think that this block was made somewhere, then why isn't it possible that this block could make itself? Everything is made by something, right? I mean, this camera that I'm recording this video on was made by a company that makes cameras. The lens that's on the front of the camera was made by that same company. The mic that I'm talking into right now was made by a company. These lights behind me here, these were all made by companies that produce those products. They create those products and they all serve a purpose. You see, if you and I were not created by anything, then what does that mean? Well, in essence, that means at the very core that we were created out of nothing. So let's go all the way back to the beginning of time in the sense of the Big Bang. You see, the Big Bang is this theory in science that basically there was a massive explosion in nowhere that blew up into make the universe and every part of the universe. And out of that explosion came tiny little particles that were able to, over millions and billions of years, form all of the physical substance of the universe. You see, the problem that I have with this is that none of this can be recreated by science. And science itself says that things can only be proven through scientific experimentation. And that experimentation has to produce reproducible results. So, if that cannot be done, then it is not science. If you can't reproduce this block by watching thin air and waiting, and this block suddenly magically forms and falls right into my hand, then this block can't scientifically create itself. Well, we all know that because that's common knowledge, that's common sense, it's reality. But why can't we look at the universe through the same pair of glasses? You see, if I look at the universe and I say, hey, a giant explosion happened, well then I have to be willing to believe that a giant explosion back millions and billions of years ago exploded itself. And if there was nothing before the Big Bang, if there was nothing floating around in whatever space there was, then what was there to explode? You see, this question has always kind of baffled my mind because to me, a big massive explosion not caused by anything is absolutely 100% impossible. And science tells you the same thing. Now, we constantly learn that, first there was the Big Bang, and then over millions and billions of years, all these planets and things formed, and after that, little particles and molecules suddenly started to evolve into the first forms of life. But the problem I have with that is that the first form of life would have to have living organisms. Well, where did those living organisms come from? Did they create themselves? Well, I take you back to the block. You see, if this block could create itself, we would have no need for a 3D printer, right? Well, it's really cool. And it's really cool that 3D printers can make stuff like this. But I never once in my entire life have seen a block like this form out of nowhere. And I would be willing to bet that you haven't either. That's because we all know that it's not possible. Not for us, not by the laws of our universe. That is not possible. So the block had to be created, just like all things have to be created by something. If I saw a block like this fall into my lap out of nowhere and I literally watched it form itself out of nothing, we're not talking about anything being in that space, we're talking about it just falls into my lap. Right in front of me, I just see it, poof, there it is, it falls into my lap. If that's the case, then why don't we have blocks like this floating around in nature that started being created millions and billions of years ago? That's because there is no way. But what I do want to present is an alternate thought. What if that explosion was caused by an intelligent designer? Someone outside of our universe, someone outside of what we know, created this universe. You see, it only makes sense by our scientific explanation of everything else. There has to be a creator. There has to be an action taken to have an end result of something being made. That leaves me with only one conclusion. There has to be an intelligent designer. There has to be something outside of this universe. Because even if a Big Bang did happen, something had to cause it, because it is impossible for something to combust or explode out of nothing. You can't take a room full of no particles, no molecules, nothing. You can't take a room full of nothing at all and have something be created. It is absolutely 100% impossible to replicate. Which means it cannot be proven, which means it cannot be a part of our understood science. Our universe is way more complicated than this camera. Our universe is way more complicated than this 3D printed cube, and it's way more complicated than the 3D printer that was created to print this cube. So when you look at a cube like this, you have to ask yourself, did that cube form itself? And if the answer is no, it is impossible for the cube to form itself, then the same conclusion can be had for life. So with that question left up in the air, for you to decide what you want to believe, let's look at the next step. Let's just say that nothing can be created without a creator. Well, since that kind of makes sense now, even if you don't believe that yet, but you can see where I'm coming from, then let's look at what that implies. That now implies that there is some being, something outside of this universe that is greater than you and I. It's outside of all reason, because that creator created what we know, meaning that creator operates in an area or a space that doesn't exist in this present universe. Now this might seem all crazy and spacey and all that kind of stuff. The reason why I'm saying all this and the reason why I'm talking to you all about this is because this to me is some of the most clear evidence that there is to point people towards a creator, God. This is too intricate to make itself. Nothing makes itself. It comes from somewhere. You came from somewhere. I came from somewhere. And if you go all the way back to the very, very first people, they came from somewhere. It's absolutely simple logic that we just need to comprehend. And if that's the case, and God does exist, then it means that you and I and everyone else in the entire world was made for a very specific purpose. It means you have a purpose on your life, I have a purpose on my life. God has created us to be a working part of a much bigger picture. Just like the lens that's recording this video right now was made for a bigger purpose in order to get the picture into the camera. The camera was made for a bigger purpose in order to record that image. The lights were made for a bigger purpose in order to illuminate the image that the lens and the camera are picking up. And this microphone was made for a bigger purpose than just to hear. It was so that it could put audio to this video. Now that is a very small example of the intricate workings of this universe. And if you really want to understand the mass spectrum that this universe falls on and the intricacies that were created, there are tons of videos and tons of people talking about every minute detail of the way that a certain ant or the way that a certain animal or the way that a certain constellation works in order for everything in the universe to operate in the bigger picture. Nothing about the idea that everything is just random and our lives are just a little blip and then we disappear and we go away forever that makes any kind of logical sense. Because if you can believe that, then it's much easier to believe that we were created by a God who put the entire universe together. For since the creation of the world, His invisible attributes, His eternal power, and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. You see, to me, it seems a lot harder to believe that everything is just random, that everything just made itself out of nowhere. Because if I can't believe that this made itself, and if you can't believe that this made itself, then why should we believe that our human body, that is more intricate than this could ever be, made itself? So if this doesn't create itself, then this doesn't create itself. So guys, this is like a heavy subject, and I was wanting to make this video because I was like, this is stuff that like every time I think about it, it just blows my mind. I've made it pretty clear there is a God, there is a creator. He created all of us, and I hope and pray that you all will be able to watch this video and take a step back, and whether you believe it or not, take a step back and just think about it and ask yourself, really, if this cube can't form itself with all of these little intricate lines that the 3D printer did, if it can't do that on its own, then why should we sit here and buy into this whole idea that life is not really as important as it seems and that everything is just random? Get out of that mindset that everything is just random, and we start understanding that there is a bigger purpose, that you have a bigger purpose, that I have a bigger purpose. It spurs on new things that are dangerous to a secular society. It spurs on hope, it spurs on joy, it spurs on happiness, and what it does is it causes the industry of sin and the industry of getting people oppressed and repressed and depressed to start to fail and to start to lose buyers. When people don't buy in, when you and I don't buy in to the lie that everything is just random and we should do what we want and we should just buy everything that they're trying to sell to us because the only way to really be happy is just to enjoy life as much as we can while we're alive, and then we go nowhere, that cannot produce true hope and true happiness. And it also does not line up with our own science. When scientists say that it's impossible for this to create itself, then they also need to be willing to say the truth about the universe and say it's impossible for the universe to create itself. And I really hope, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. You can find me on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. If you have any questions, I'd love to talk to you about it. So guys, this is just a brief overview. This is a 3D printed cube. I hope you'd enjoy this video. I hope it somehow made you think. I hope it was thought-provoking. If you disagree with me, that's cool. I totally understand. Because you know what? We all have opinions, and we all have things that we think one way or another way on. If you don't agree with me, you have the right to have that opinion, just like I have the right to have this opinion. But even if you have that opinion, just stop and think through and ask yourself realistically, deep down inside, not whether it's your opinion or not whether you have a pride about the way you've always thought about things or what you've always told people, ask yourself for real, is it actually possible for the universe to have created itself? So leave me comments, like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos. I do lots of random stuff, not just super deep, heavy, where did the universe come from type videos. But I enjoy hanging out and I enjoy making videos. So thanks a lot, guys. Have a great, blessed rest of your day or evening or morning, and we will talk soon.